Conquered an empire from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. They despoiled the great city of Babylon and enslaved the tribes of Israel. Even the Pharaoh of Egypt paid them tribute. Their army became the largest yet seen, their warriors the greatest, and their warfare the cruelest. In September of 655 BC, an Assyrian army sets off from its base in southern Iraq. Its target, Elam, a kingdom on the Persian Gulf. Boldly, the Elamites march from their city, cross the river that divides them from their foe, and prepare to do battle. At daybreak, the first Assyrians come into view. Like a storm gathering, thousands of horses and men assemble. The signal for attack is sounded, and the chariots charge. By day's end, the river runs red with the blood of animals and men, the blood of Elamites. In their hour of victory, the Assyrians are proud and cruel.
I cut their throats like lambs. I cut off their precious lives as one cuts a string. Like the many waters of a storm, I made the contents of their gullets and entrails run down upon the wide earth. My prancing steeds plunged into the streams of blood and filth. With the bodies of their warriors, I filled the plain like grass.
Among the victims, the Elamite king.
Tuman, king of Elam, fled to save his life and hid in a wood. The crossbar of his royal transport broke, and it overturned on him. In desperation, he said to his son, "Use your bow."
Tuman's son tried to save him, to no avail. The king was caught and beheaded. The trophy was taken to the Assyrian king, who slashed it and spat on it. Then he hung it on a tree for all to see, while he celebrated his victory with a banquet. Tuman's followers suffered no less. Some were made to grind up the bones of their dead. Others were flayed alive. When the Assyrian king returned to Nineveh, his artisans immortalized the triumphs of his war machine. In room after room of his cavernous palace, they glorified his butchery. Men impaled on spikes, eyes put out, heads cut off. To ambassadors from distant realms, the writing on the wall was clear. The great Assyrian army arose from humble origins, a small state surrounding the holy city of Ashur, from which they drew their name. Well situated in the rain belt of what would become northern Iraq, Assyria grew up on the fertile banks of the river Tigris, a kingdom as prosperous as the land. But these plains, so inviting to be tilled, beckoned to be plundered. In one hand, a farmer needed his plowshare. In the other, a sword. By 1000 BC, Assyria, long a vassal to other kings, had tired of the foreign yoke. As regent of the gods on earth, the king of Assyria was divinely sanctioned to wage war.
Ashur, father of the gods, empowered me to depopulate and repopulate, to make broad the boundary of the land of Assyria.
Assyria began to enlarge its borders, but with each change of seasons, the empire withered. When autumn came, soldiers returned to their fields, and rebellion sprouted. In 745 BC, a new king took the throne and changed history. Tiglath-Pileser III vowed to make Assyria forever strong with a standing army. Encouraged by the prospects of a career in arms, thousands of young men enlisted. Tiglath-Pileser created all the institutions these soldiers would need, starting with an armory.
To provide proper arrangements for the camp, to look after the steeds, the mules, the chariots, the battle equipment, and the enemy booty.
Iron was the backbone of the army. Each soldier was issued a conical iron helmet, a sturdy breastplate of interlocking strips of bronze, and strong leather boots. The tallest men served as spear carriers, wielding an iron-tipped lance. When they locked with their foe, they would reach for their dagger. Some soldiers became archers. Some carried no weapon at all. Their role was to protect other warriors. They gave cover to archers with shields 4 feet high, hammered out of leather, faced with bronze, or plated with wickerwork. At the festival of the New Year, the king inspected his army to ensure it was always ready to fight. Fed, clothed, and armed at his expense, the Assyrian warriors became the most professional army the world had yet seen. Well equipped as they were, the Assyrians sought more: horses for their chariots, iron for weapons, timber for siege engines. To acquire these tools of war, the Assyrians campaigned farther and farther afield and brought back the spoils of victory.
Gold, silver, tin, copper, linen garments with many splendid trimmings, large and small monkeys, ivory, ebony. This their tribute I received, and they embraced my feet.
From his throne in Nineveh, the king knew where the peace was kept and where it was broken. Messengers relayed signals from fire towers or wrote dispatches on clay tablets. In 701 BC, the Assyrian king Sennacherib received troubling word from the province of Judah. Its king refused to pay tribute. Sennacherib was furious. He mobilized his army, tens of thousands strong, then swelled its ranks from states who owed him allegiance.
Get together your prefects and the horses of your cavalry immediately. Whoever is late will be impaled in the middle of his house.
Before the Assyrians set off, priests sacrificed bulls and goats, and the troops prayed to Ishtar, goddess of war.
O thou, heroine among the gods, like a bundle rip him open in the midst of battle. Raise up against him a tempest, an evil wind.
At the outset, the Assyrians enjoyed an advantage possessed by few enemies: mobility. They would travel along good roads, maintained by the shovels of prisoners of war. On flat land, they could advance 20 miles a day. The king rode at the front among his cavalry and chariots, followed by his infantry. Behind them all snaked a long supply train, where craftsmen made weapons as they rode. In surmounting natural obstacles, especially rivers, the Assyrians reached new heights of ingenuity. Vehicles were carried in large boats, horses swimming behind, troops crossing on inflated animal skins, shields and weapons strapped to their backs. Living off the land, such a host would not have gone far. Because the king had set up huge granaries throughout the empire, his troops could campaign up to 300 miles from a base of supply. Truly could the king of Assyria make his power felt far and wide. Without such supplies, they could not feed the herds of horses so vital to the Assyrian army, whose most feared weapon was the chariot. Like the Egyptians, the Assyrians had improved on the clumsy four-wheeled carts of Babylonia, massing their two-wheeled chariots